All right, Buck Squad. I'm your host, Jaron. I'm going to tell you why step one of my prediction earlier this week has come true.
What's up, Buck Squad? Marcus Ray, Michigan All-American. I'll tell you where the Bucs won this football game before the fourth quarter even ended.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'll tell you why today, just as a whole, felt pretty weird.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What up, Buck Squad? Real quick, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Like I said, I'm Jaron Spor. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to break down the offense and defense after the Bucs knocked off the Carolina Panthers 16-14 to at least keep their playoff hopes alive. We're going to go around the NFL. Obviously, there's only one other game that's taking place today. It's playing right now, but we can preview even more of the Falcons and the Saints. Also look at some other games. The Ravens and Steelers are in a playoff game, stuff like that happening tomorrow. And then we will give our player of the game like we do every post-game show. But first, let's dive into the offense. I was telling Ryan before this, it was kind of a weird game because my whole plan was I was going to be on vacation. I was going to watch the game, and then I was going to take my wife out to dinner for letting me watch the game during vacation. Unfortunately, she got sick, so we had to drive back. So I was listening to the game the whole way, which I don't like doing it as much as watching just because I like to see stuff. But the offense kind of got off to that hot start that we've kind of talked about that they do in the past or have done in the past. They scored right off the rip. Cade Otton, by the way, had a great game. He became Baker's kind of go-to in safety net, 7 catches, 94 yards. They also decided we're not doing this rotating the running backs. Bucky was the guy, 26 carries, 85 yards. Rashad had 7 carries, and Sean Tucker had 4. With the downpour, they decided to run it, obviously, 42 times compared to 22 times throwing it. Baker had the one bad interception. No excuse for it. I mean, I know the weather's not great, but no excuse for it. Bad interception. But other than that, I thought he was really good. He had a heck of a play. I believe it was the one that led to the field goal right before halftime around midfield. That was just – if that was Patrick Mahomes, it'd be blasted all over social media right now. It was a crazy play. But overall, it's kind of a weird game for the offense. I thought it was a solid performance. But, again, started hot and kind of tailored off as the game went on.
Yeah, I thought offensively they showed a lot of balance. And, when you have inclement weather, running the football is, obviously paramount. And even like when you watch like Bryce throw the ball, it looked like he was shot putting the football. So it's tough to throw the ball in raining weather. But I thought offensively for them to run for 140 yards, pass for 198, it was a situation where they did what they had to do to win the game. And like you mentioned, Jaron, the Bucs got off to that fast start. And I think where a 10-0 lead, to score 10 points, that's something that they haven't been able to do, was go up by 2 scores. And I think in the losing streak, when you look at the turnovers, they showed the graphic. I was watching ESPN or whatever, and they were showing the turnover margin and how they have 14 turnovers in the 7 losses. And I was just thinking, like, if the Bucs don't turn it over as much, then they win. I thought that was it, but really what it is they need a 2-score lead because the defense isn't good enough to play from a 1-score lead, or if the game is that close, they're probably going to lose it. But once they went up by double digits, I felt comfortable. You want Bucky to obviously get the ball, get his carries. And if they do make the playoffs, obviously, depending on what happens with the Falcons and the Saints, you want him to be in playoff form as far as carries, his health. Cade Otton, as you mentioned, I think he got busy. He actually came alive, and he was a missing part. And I think sometimes when you add all the pieces, when everybody's healthy with Mike and J-Mac and Chris and those guys, Cade was obviously kind of was the forgotten man. And I think the offensive line, played well enough, to give Baker some time. But I actually think Baker made some plays with his feet. He improvised. He scrambled. He actually extended some plays, and he was the key cog. I thought, other than the turnover, I felt like he did his thing. But there's no way to expect any of these receivers to obviously get off down the field in that weather, and I think that's why Cade kind of showed up too.
So I'll start with one kind of general thing, which is going to be kind of sprinkled throughout today why it felt so weird to me today. Not only just in the stadium, but just knowing how important this game was, but so many of the other things going on in the background. One of the positive, more again finite or final things is that today, unless the Bucs make the playoffs, of course, was the last broadcast of Gene Deckerhoff as the voice of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 37 years being the voice of the Buccaneers. And of course, Gene is going to have played such a pivotal role for so many people. I know that even though I have not been able to listen to a lot of his live stuff, I've gone to plenty of games and gotten plenty of touchdown replays on the Jumbotron, a lot of caught ball, touchdown, Tampa Bay. Fire the cannons, all that kind of stuff. And so just want to say, again, how much Gene Deckerhoff meant to Buccaneer football. And so for 37 years, job well done from Gene Deckerhoff. On the offensive side of the ball today, I thought that despite the weather, they were able to get some play action passing going in the first quarter and take advantage of the fact that the Panthers were going to be honing in on the run game. The Bucs did feel more successful running the ball in the first quarter, maybe due to the balance that they were able to show and just trying to establish that lead. They were able to get a couple bootlegs. They were able to get Cade Otton going early, as you guys mentioned, especially for that first touchdown ball. And so, again, I think that it was a very focused effort. And just the first quarter as a whole, to me, felt like the best version of what Tampa Bay could have been this year. Maybe parts of what they were the first 8 or so games, and then the things that they lacked in doing. They went right down the field, scored the touchdown. They got a 3 and out. They went down the field again, got a field goal, got another stop. And then that's when the Baker interception came. And then the rest of the game was the Buccaneers we saw the last 7 or 8 games. And so, I think that there was a splash of everything today where they showed some good concepts and they did run the ball pretty well. They certainly ran it better than Carolina. I know 3.3 a carry from Bucky is not going to be incredibly sexy, but it's far better than Carolina's combined performance of 12 rushes for 20 yards from Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. So they did what they needed to do on the ground. But there was also a sequence I want to go ahead and talk about at the end of the first half, which still, again, showed me where the Bucs thought process is and something that I've not agreed with how they have done things this year. And that is that they were ultra conservative, up 10-7 after the first Carolina turnover. They ran the ball, got about 7 yards, which should have been a good drive starter. I certainly understand getting the clock going. But then after that, they put Sean Tucker in the game. It's like 2nd and 2 or 3. They lose a yard or 2 in the ground. The clock's ticking. And then that's when Baker has the Houdini play that you previously mentioned to Cade Otton down the sideline to get to about the 30-yard line. And even at that point, you got all your timeouts, 18 seconds left. Well, what do? 3 straight runs just to get in really solid field goal range. And really, they'd gotten a 7-yard run on that first down play. So they'd gotten to the 24. And not one shot at the end zone, not one care for the clock beforehand. They were obviously so nervous that they would get stopped and have to give Carolina the ball back at some point, even I guess at the end there, but especially when they ran the ball to start that sequence after the Bryce Young interception. So that kind of conservative nature is, I think, part of baked into what this Buccaneers team has become, of trying not to lose or do something stupid rather than be aggressive and attack. And I mean, I guess it worked enough today to get them the win, but in general, it clearly did not work for them in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because now there's going to be plenty of time, and we've already done it, to criticize Todd Bowles and the season that he's had and just the coach he is. So I don't want this to be a whole bash Todd Bowles when we just won 16-14. But with that being said, I was thinking that kind of too, because in the time that I was talking about, or what I thought about, was not that one. It was actually later in the game when they punted around the 50-yard line on a 4th and 2. It was early in the 4th. It wasn't the one later in the 4th. That was smart, obviously, with 20 seconds left or whatever. This one was early in the 4th. And it's just one of those things that Tampa Bay has to realize who they are, and Todd Bowles has to realize who they are as long as he's the head coach. And that is, this is an offensive football team. And not to say that they're historic offensively or great offensive. That's not what I'm trying to say. They're just so bad defensively. They got to start playing like they are bad defensively, because right now they're not doing that. And I thought there was a great point. We're going to get into the defense next segment. But when they went down and scored to make it 16-14, and they hit the fourth down, the deep fourth down play, then they hit the fade ball, Dan Orlovsky came on and said, you just knew it was going to happen, because that's how it's happened all year long. In the worst moments, the secondary gets burned. That's what happens. And that's why I said that around the 50-yard line. You just got to go for that. And I know it's like the analytics I think actually the analytics probably tell you to go for it. But even if they don't tell you to go for it, or if your gut tells you not to go for it, you got to realize what team you have. And you don't have a very good defensive team. And the one thing I will kind of a side note to that, to give them credit for, though, is we've talked about how they've struggled closing games offensively. When they cut it to 16-14, who else thought that they were going to go 3 and out and have to punt, and we were going to have to see this defense make a stop? That's what I thought was going to happen. And a big reason why, and Marcus has brought up this many times, how they struggle closing games, I think it's because they can't run the football. You can't rely on them to run it 3 times and get 10 yards. Now they had so Baker, and it was a great play call by Grizz to roll Baker out, get Cade on, and at least get 1 first down to make it almost impossible for the Panthers to come back. But they gotta, if I think the first priority is fix the defense this offseason. The next priority has to be getting a run game so they can close out some of these games.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's why I think situationally they had good moments in the first quarter. They did just enough with that play action bootleg in the fourth quarter to kind of get around the fact that they are not running it quite well enough. Again, they've kind of been average, right? And that's in a lot of ways this team has been average. Now, there's a couple of ways that they've been worse than average, but you have a couple of games where we talked about, okay, the Bucs really ran the ball well, run for maybe $140, $160 as a team, something like that. And then they have these games where they can't really ever establish it. They have to go to the pass, they have to play from behind, what have you. And you're right, Jaron, like, even no matter what the actual numbers say for the first 3 quarters or what the week before was, if they've got a 5 or 6 minute drive that they've got to put together to lock up the game, you're not picking up the first downs with 3 straight runs. You're going to have to mix something Baker's going to have to do in there. And so, again, that's why, and gosh, there's so many things about this offense that I felt like could have been. But one of the things it could have been is that if you had established effective play action passing, if you establish your weapons on the edge, and Baker had not started to turn the ball over more towards the end of the season, you might have been able to get a little bit more of a consistent ground game. You might have been able to kind of help the two sides work together a little bit more. So they just never got all the way established with any one thing that they were trying to do offensively. And so that's why you would see 1 quarter of, oh, here it comes. And then the rest of the game be like, not so much.
Yeah, and I think too, when you talk play action pass, from a football perspective, that keeps the defense honest. And sometimes, like, when you see sprint out, bootleg, that's the kind of stuff you run when you don't feel like you can pass protect straight up, when you just drop back and just let it go. And then it also gives you angles, and then it keeps the defense off balance. I thought that call on 3rd and 4 was a great call by Grizz. And, Baker's legs were really, really active today. And I think the Bucs figured out who they were offensively too late. What I mean by that is, like, if you look at it, when they went 1-7, since week 10 or whatever, like, when you really watch them, it looked like he was trying to figure it out. Grizz was trying to figure it out. And then in this must-win situation, and there's still no guarantee that they'll get in the playoffs, it's just, I think he figured out how to coach to win, what type of offense you need to be in that moment. And that's what coaching is. So, when you look at some of those games, like, let's say the Saints and the Falcons lost and the Dolphins, it's like they were still trying to figure it out. And I think Grizz figured out today, he proved he can call a game when it was a low-scoring affair where he didn't have to get into a track meet, and the defense played well enough but he called the game based on the situation, and that's what coaching is. You do what you have to do to win the game. It's not being good at what you do or what your system is. It's when to call what. And I thought he did that in the clutch this afternoon.
And I know we're out of time, but just a quick question for both of you. I felt like, again, I was listening to the game, but I felt like Grizz called a lot more play action passes, which is something we've been calling for, get Baker kind of out of the pocket, and that seemed to work out well. Was that kind of accurate from what you guys watched?
I think so. And that's kind of what I was trying to say. I felt like in this one particular game, play action pass, trying to, especially when they ran the ball so much, they ran the ball 42 times out of 66 plays. I mean, 42 rushes in an NFL game we're going back to 1985 now. You know what I mean? I don't want to age myself, but this isn't a running league. It's a passing league right now, but you still have to run the ball to win the game. But I just felt like using the tight end, like when you see run game, play action, tight end, it's called conservative, but it's also being smart.
And I think, that is smart, but, I hate to be a little skeptical, but I feel like Josh Grizzard, it was just so obvious to anyone that would be how you would need to throw the ball at all. You can't straight drop back pass when everyone's going to be slipping and sliding around. You
Right.
really benefit from the defense thinking you're going one way or another and going the next. That's how Carolina ended up scoring their first touchdown in the game, is the whole Bucs defense slid one way and then the receiver slid the other way. And so having Cade Otton leak out, that's why I think that, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, not a lot of targets today. It's because when you're play action passing, the corners are not going to be as sucked in by play action passing, but the middle of the field, the linebackers, maybe the safeties will be. And so when you get their eyes in the wrong place, you're going to go right across their face with the tight ends and that sort of thing. And that's what opened up Otton so much.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, we will break down the defense. They might have just had the best performance of the season given the circumstances. We'll talk about that coming up next. Well, this episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. The new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burdened you. We all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back, and therapy can help you identify what those things are by offering an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, motivations, and emotions. That's where BetterHelp comes in, making it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist who can help you work through what's holding you back. Maybe it's fear, pressure, perfection, or doubts that's been weighing you down. All BetterHelp therapists are fully licensed in the U.S. and work according to a strict code of conduct. They do the matching work for you. A short questionnaire identifies your needs and preferences. And with over 12 years of experience, they typically get it right the first time. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. And our next one up is Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player reprojections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right with high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night. The action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks was quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. I love the flexibility with options like Flex Play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses. The new early payouts feature is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game ends. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, we're back for another segment. Let's break down the defense. Again, held the Carolina Panthers to 14 points, held the rushing attack just like they did the first time around. Carolina, again, it was a rainy game, so the weather wasn't great, but you hold them to 19 yards on 14 carries, 1.4 yards per carry. Chuba had 5 for 10. Rico Dowdle had 7 for 10. You can't complain about that kind of performance.
No, you can't. And, defensively, I actually think this is one of the better games the defense has played, especially in the last 2 months. So probably going back to the Saints game when they absolutely dominated defensively.
Mhm.
When you hold a team in the NFL to 19 yards total rushing yards, I mean, I think that's amazing. And you create 3 turnovers, you would think that the score would be worse than 16-14. But at the same time, I think collectively the game plan for Tampa Bay was to stop the run. They went all in on stopping the run, even though there wasn't a ton of attempts. They wanted to make Bryce beat them. So, obviously McMillan and Coker, they did their thing a little bit. I mean, they didn't kill it, but they made some catches, and it just wasn't enough. And like I said earlier, I think the 2-score lead gave them enough of a cushion to be able to protect the lead and give up a play or two, like, the touchdown late in the game. It kind of, it still gave them some cushion to be in a position to win the game. And they weren't in that same position weeks ago. I thought Lavonte David played well. I mean, I don't know if this is his last game or not, but I will tell you that I felt like they didn't give up the big play. Like explosives is something that was hurting this defense, like vertical passes. When DBs were getting picked on and people were going up top on the Bucs. We've seen since we started this show, but that didn't happen today. And even though Bryce, threw for some yards, it just wasn't enough because he didn't get all the chunk plays that would have made the Bucs quit or put the Bucs in a situation where they were going to have to play from behind. So I thought the defense played well enough. When you create 3 turnovers, only surrender 19 yards, and give up 14 points, you should win every game in this league.
You're right about that, Marcus. And, I think that even still, I mentioned earlier, I could find some stuff that's symbolic of how the Bucs season went. I think that the Panthers did start to figure out a little bit of the Bucs defense in the second half. They got cute and tried that trick play and put the ball on the ground, which derailed what would have been some sort of points. They did miss a field goal. So they left some stuff on the table. But the tone that the Bucs set, just the way this team's been losing, and you said at the very first point you made today, Marcus, that just by getting a solid lead for a change, instead of always looking up and figuring out how to come from behind and that sort of thing. I mean, I could be wrong here, but I don't think that they'd had a 2-possession lead since the Atlanta game that they blew on the Thursday night. I could be wrong, but when you're on your home field, you should be being able to hold 2-possession leads. Now, again, there was ways in which their offense could have scored more points, both sides. But I think that when it comes to what they were able to do, despite still not getting much pressure on Bryce Young at all, they were able to do a disciplined job in the secondary. I know they gave up the long one late, but they had a lot of coverage. Not sacks, but rollouts, just frustration from Bryce where he just had to figure out something to do with the ball at some point. So I thought it was more on the linebackers and secondary, again, despite what happened very late in the game. I do want to give a shout out to Lavonte David. This is, again, another one of the weird things where we could go with the isolated view of today's game, which is obviously what we're talking about. The big picture view, which is, what does it mean for the playoffs? What does it mean for Todd Bowles? What does it mean for all that? And then the even above the big picture view, the franchise view. I mentioned Gene Deckerhoff in the first segment. Lavonte David tied Derek Brooks today for the most tackles in Buccaneers history all time. 6th all time in tackles, period. The stat began tracked in the early 90s, but tied Derek Brooks for the most tackles in Buccaneers history today. So we don't know if this is the last game Lavonte David will ever play. I think he is probably the most likely player to retire on the team other than like Teddy Bridgewater. But, I think that Lavonte has meant so much as a Buck and, has had a Hall of Fame caliber career. And, I don't think that he ever got the love nationally that he probably deserved. I think that he had to anchor some bad defenses in the beginning, and I think he led the best defenses the Bucs had, when Todd Bowles first got here as defensive coordinator. So, I think that his leadership is what kind of held this thing together amongst all the turmoil and amongst all of the emotion that certainly we all felt as this season got dragged so far downhill. So just big props to Lavonte, the leader of this defense, and that they did do a great job against the run, and that they did do, in my estimation, a better job than the offense actually did just in terms of actual output.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, even when they were playing the great defense, and he was the leader of the defense, all you heard about was the pass rush that year. Like, that's why, to your point, he never really got the credit he deserved because of how down he was until he locked down Travis Kelce in that Super Bowl. Then he started getting the credit that he deserved. But before that, all you heard about was the pass rush, even though it was Lavonte. And Lavante's kind of a quieter person. He's not going to come out and he's not going to be the loud person that always, gets all the shine on him. And so if that was his last game, he had a heck of a game for the Buccaneers. But yeah, I mean, defense, again, when you shut down their running attack, you have a chance to beat them, and they did. Now, the negatives were you give up that big play to McMillan on the fourth down that would have probably iced the game away if you were able to stop him. Which in that one just I don't know if it was because of the call. It was probably because they went all out blitz and there was no safety help because of that, and Parrish just kind of fell for a double move on that play. And then on the play on Morrison, they brought it up on the broadcast. And Marcus, if you want to touch on this actually even more, playing a DB, it looked like he had safety inside help, but he was playing inside also, and which gave up the fade to the outside. And so they were mentioning that maybe he should have played on the outside since he already has inside help, and then that could have taken away the fade. That was Morrison that did that, which that could just be a rookie making a mistake there, not lined up correctly. But I'm glad you brought up the flea flicker too, because that was a weird one. Because I don't know if y'all saw. Did y'all see Ryan, you were at the game, but I don't know if you saw from the sky view of it. It did, like, no other player ran like they were running a flea flicker. So, like, did Rico mess up the call, and that's why Bryce was kind of surprised by the pitch back? Because McMillan, usually, like, if there's a flea flicker, you have someone going deep, like either a post or a go route or something. McMillan ran a 5-yard, like, curl route. That was it. Like, so I don't know if that was like a mess up. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I think it was miscommunication there. And well, from a receiver standpoint, when there is a flea flicker, you have to sell the run first. So, like, they may fake block and go or something like that, or start off slow and jog and look back. And then, it just seemed like that everyone wasn't on the same page. And Jaron, to your point, like, the routes didn't seem to marry up with what we thought was a flea flicker. And I'm not even sure Bryce even thought it was a flea flicker. And in that weather, I would even be surprised, even in that area of the field, there's not even enough grass to even run that type of play successfully. So, I mean, I don't know. And then to your question about leverage, when you have inside help, like when you have a safety in the middle and then a linebacker or somebody underneath in the low hole, as they call it, you want to play outside leverage. But if you're playing inside leverage, a lot of times it has to do with the wide receiver split. So for him to get beat on that, he was probably relying on the sideline and just played poor technique. But I would have to go back to the receiver split to really tell you. And what I mean by split is if he's on top of the numbers or if he's bottom of the numbers or close to the sideline. Obviously, if he's wide, it's an inside route. If he lines up a little closer to the line, like to the lineman, then it's going to be some outside route or a shallow cross. So, it's hard to tell there without watching the tape. But when you have inside help deep, then you want to play outside leverage.
Yeah, I did not, Jaron, see the replay ever of the flea flicker being in the stadium. Sometimes you get the replays you want / need. Sometimes you're busy celebrating. What the hell was that? Thank you for that. And maybe they showed it, maybe they did. I don't know. I think I blacked out for a second. But I think that, again, that was such a pivotal moment because regardless of what Carolina was trying to accomplish, we know that Tampa has still blown some of these leads, even though we've talked some on this show about how valuable it was with all the bad stuff that's been going on for Tampa for weeks to get a 2-possession lead. Again, the fact of the matter is they've blown that too in this losing streak. So, it kind of felt, oh no, here we go again. There's way too much time left. And then to get cute like that, it just kind of showed you that the reality is no matter who gets their division rival to work out for them tomorrow. Both these teams are not like true playoff teams. They are benefactors of a horrible division that is enabling someone from the southern part of the United States to go to the playoffs out of the NFC. I mean, that's just the reality. Neither one of these teams would go to the playoffs in any other division. They certainly would be a wild card. They would not rise up and beat any of these other teams' division. So you just kind of saw today two teams that are very meh, that are somewhere around average, just being able to duke it out in a sloppy, wet weather game. And it became a close game. It became who made the least important mistake. And Carolina made one extra mistake than Tampa.
And you know what? I mean, I know we got to get to a break, Jaron, but yeah, I think Ryan was up in those club seats, man. You got to watch that alcohol intake up there, man.
No.
You know? Great time in
Just
that.
black it out.
I have been up there before, but not today. Not today.
I
You're
can't
in the
wait.
midst of it.
I can't wait till the day when the NFL goes to the top 14 teams, and like when you see like an 11-5 team don't get in, and then an 8-9 team in another division get in. I really hate that. It's automatic bid in a bad division year. Like I because sometimes, you know, the two best teams are in the same conference. When I mean like AFC, you know what I mean, or they're in the same division, and we want that to be the Super Bowl. So when you see good teams get left out, and then a bad or a mid or average team like these two today, one of them has to get in, and then it's like, and then you'll see a good team sitting at home. I just can't wait and it's coming when the NFL goes to straight seeding based off record, and AFC and NFC doesn't matter anymore. It's going to happen.
And I also hate that they get not just they get a playoff berth, but they get a home game. Like, there's no way that the 49ers or the Seahawks loser should have to travel to Carolina or Tampa kind of thing. But that's just how it is. All right, coming up next, we will go around the NFL. We will talk about the Saints and the Falcons, break that game down a little bit. But there's also some other big games going on. I just mentioned the Seahawks and the 49ers. So we'll talk about that coming up next. Well, kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. Let's be real. Plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your healthy goals. That's where DripDrop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better, think clearer, focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. I've been using DripDrop as part of my daily routine. It's honestly a game changer, not just for workouts, but every single day. I love several of the flavors. I actually got a full pack, the no sugar pack. Didn't have a flavor in there I didn't like. So I love that it uses a precise ratio of electrolytes and glucose for rapid absorption, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to DripDrop.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's DripDrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Stock up now at DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, we're back here for another segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Just a reminder, this doesn't take anything away from what James does with the Locked On Bucs. He does his daily show, great show. This is just extra content we do twice a week. I believe he's probably told you guys he wasn't able to do an episode today. He's out of town, but he's going to be doing his recap of the game on Sunday. So make sure you will check that out as well. But let's look a little bit around the NFL. Seattle and the 49ers are going on right now. I believe the winner actually gets the 1 seed in this matchup. And right now, Seattle's up 10 with 4 minutes left and driving. So looks like Seattle's probably going to put that one away. But Atlanta and New Orleans obviously is the biggest one for Bucs fans. They need the Saints to beat the Falcons on the road. Saints have been the hottest team in the NFC South, but they're resting just about everyone because they're trying to get the best, draft pick they can. So it's probably not looking good for the Bucs' hopes, which is why at the start I said the first half of my predictions coming true, because last week when we were predicting the game, I said I thought Tampa was going to win, but I thought then the Falcons were going to win, so it was going to be the most Tampa thing ever where they don't actually get in the playoff anyways. And I still think that will be true. The other one that I'm excited about is the Ravens and the Steelers, because the winner gets in that one, and that's just a classic rivalry already. But then you throw in playoff implications on top of it and makes it that much more fun.
Yeah, I don't believe, Jaron, that the Falcons or the Saints have lost since they played Tampa. I
Yeah.
think that the Buccaneers were the initiator for both because the Saints originally helped Tampa a lot by beating Carolina, or else the game would still be meaningless today and tomorrow. So I guess the Saints have helped Tampa once already, but even the Falcons, I mean, winning 3 in a row. And look, I want to preface this and say that I am not blaming others. The blame if they miss the playoffs is squarely at one Buccaneer place, but the Rams had a very weird role in how the South shook out this year.
Mhm.
They lambasted the Buccaneers on what was that, Sunday Night Football or whatever.
Yeah. Then
They
again,
lose
Baker
the
got hurt.
they lose
Yeah.
to Carolina and they lose to Atlanta. So
Mhm.
if any of those three results change, then the Buccaneers win the division. But of course, this is still on the Bucs. That's not an excuse. That's just a little, hey, if you want to find some other teams to be ill will towards. And by the way, with the 49ers looking like they'll lose, the 5 seed will be the Rams if they beat the Cardinals tomorrow. So the NFC South champion would play LA. So Carolina, I'm sure would love that. They've already beaten them. Tampa would have probably preferred Seattle or San Francisco since they beat them, but that's beside the point. You're right, Jaron, that again, the 49ers, or excuse me, the Ravens and the Steelers game is going to be a fun game. That should just be hand Derrick Henry is the balls many times until he falls over exhausted. I mean, and you know what? I've never seen him fall over exhausted before. So you probably do it the whole game at nauseum. For Pittsburgh, they have just continued to be the last several seasons right around this 500 mark, not unlike Tampa. I mean, the division has not been the same because the Ravens have traditionally been good. The Bengals had their 1 year in the sun, but Pittsburgh's been hovering 500 ball for the post Ben Roethlisberger's years, and so if they lose this game, the noise around Tomlin will just continue again. And I think I said it last week on the show. A lot of respect for him. I think he's going to be one that if he takes a year off or just goes somewhere else after this time in Pittsburgh, I think he'll do a bang up job at his next organization. I think he's a heck of a coach, but it's just one of those things where it happens for so long and guys hear the same spiel over and over and over again. And the minute something goes wrong, you just start to have those doubts and you just kind of gets a little bit old sour taste in your mouth. So I think that's an important football game. I think it could shape the coaching vacancies in the off season. Cause again, not Harbaugh, but what might happen if Pittsburgh does lose and want to say goodbye to Mike Tomlin or vice versa. So I think that one's going to be a very interesting game.
I think, like, when you really look at the big picture, the NFC South is so bad that the two teams at the bottom are playing the best football in that division. The New Orleans Saints won 5 out of their last 7. They actually beat Carolina twice, and they actually beat Tampa Bay and Carolina back to back. And some circles would say, had they had this thing figured out soon enough, they probably should have won this division. And people, I'm sure, be like, oh, what do you mean? Well, when you watch the game, a lot of times people look at records and they don't watch the games and they don't look at matchups. And the Falcons have won 3 straight. And the fact that, they're playing spoiler right now and they have a say. It's a shame that the Falcons even have a say in what happens at the top of this division. And you can pick one game out of those previous 8 before today for the Bucs and say if they could have just won that one or those 2. Like, you're not supposed to lose to Miami. You're just not supposed to lose to the Falcons and the Saints. I mean, just especially when they were a first place team at the break. So for me, it's awfully weird how some of these teams don't come alive until it's too late. Like the Saints actually are pretty good. They're playing good football right now. And when you look at Seattle, a guy like Sam Darnold, I mean, they said that he was going to be playing for, a number 1 seed for the 2nd year in a row. Seattle Seahawks is a team that could win this whole thing, guys. I mean, let's not, I don't think there's a clear favorite, but I'm saying, when you start looking at teams at this point of the season, you have to be in peak performance mode to be a serious contender. I think Mike Tomlin, I like Mike. I remember him when he was a defensive back coach at Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati. I was at Michigan, I believe, and he was working the football camp, putting helmet stickers on, and I was a senior or something like that. And I watched his rise. And, Mike was a D coordinator for 1 year, and he wasn't really that good of a coordinator. He came from that Dungy tree, and they kind of had an underground railroad of, African-American coaches, kind of like they were trying to create that. And he's done good, but Mike has underachieved, I think, at Pittsburgh. And because Pittsburgh doesn't fire coaches, they've only had, 3 head coaches in about 50 years or so, like even longer than that. So don't misquote me. I just remember Chuck Noll, Cowher, and then him. But the Steelers have to win this game. Like, they have to win the division. Baltimore was playing without obviously Lamar for some games, and you don't want to let a guy like John Harbaugh get into the playoffs, because he'll mess around and knock the Broncos off or Patriots.
Right.
He'll find a way to out special teams you, and then you'll look up like they shouldn't have been in it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I think this year's playoffs, when they start and all things are solidified after tomorrow's games, it's going to look like the college football playoffs. Like, who would have thought Ole Miss would really be there, or the Canes, where it was like they shouldn't, not even the conference champion, and now they're in the Final Four and probably can win this thing, and they're choking out the Buckeyes and all that stuff. You don't want a team like the Ravens to get in there and stumble in there and start choking people out. And so, like, I just feel like that's, you guys mentioned it, Steelers, Ravens, huge. Obviously, all eyes are on the Falcons and the Saints. I think Atlanta's going to win the game. I think the Saints are just going to tank it. I just do. I mean, they're talking about resting players and all this stuff. It's like the season's over. Let Atlanta do it. It's a 3-way tie for first, record-wise, and then Carolina will go, and then all the Bucs will have to blame us themselves.
Yeah, the Bucs have themselves to blame. But like Ryan mentioned, I was thinking about that too earlier, about the Rams, how impactful they've been on this division, because we've talked about how bad the division is, and Rams are a team that many think can win a Super Bowl. Like, they've been that good, but they lose to the Panthers and they lose to the Falcons, 2 games that we didn't think that would happen. And if they just win one of those, it's a wrap. Bucs are in the playoffs. But it's the Bucs' fault. They blew the lead to the Falcons. They blew the game to the Dolphins. Like, they blew the first one to the Panthers. Like, and then they blew the game to the Saints. I mean, it's their fault for where they're at right now. But I'm glad y'all brought up Tomlin as well, because Tomlin, I think this is the thing about Mike Tomlin. I think he's really a great coach. I really do. I think early on, obviously, he did a great job, won the Super Bowls and everything, and he's kind of tailored off, or won the Super Bowl, and he's kind of tailored off lately, and they just have kind of been acceptant of mediocrity. And I have some cousins, and they are diehard Pittsburgh fans. And I tell them every year, like, hey, it would be best for y'all not to make the playoffs, so then you can get that quarterback, or you can get that offensive lineman, or whatever it was every year. And they were like, no, I don't care. We just want to make the playoff. And I'm like, but you're just barely above 500. You're just barely you're never going to go to the Super Bowl again until you have that bad year where you can start to rebuild. And they didn't care. As long as they were having a winning record and they were getting in the playoff, that's all they were caring about, which is weird, because the Steelers are one of the best franchises ever. Like, it should be Super Bowl or bust in Pittsburgh every year, in my opinion. Like, they're one of the few that can say that. And it just hasn't been that way. And I feel like they just kind of, grown to accept what Mike Tomlin is. And maybe they need a different voice, as you guys mentioned. And maybe they will do that this season. I think Tomlin, obviously, like Ryan mentioned, should take a year off. I think he would do great on TV too in that year if he chose to do that. And then I think there would be a lot of teams lining up to sign him as a head coach after the year.
Well, real quick, Ryan, like, I think Mike Tomlin, it's because Pittsburgh doesn't fire coaches and he hasn't had a losing season. I think a change will be different at Mike's age. If I'm 49, Mike's 53, so he's 4 years older than me. And I think he needs to go to the college game. I think he would be perfect for it. I think he can recruit. I think he's young enough. I think he can relate to players. I think he comes with that pedigree. And now that you can pay players in college, I think he would be able to manage a budget. NIL would be through the roof. Who wouldn't want to play for Mike Tomlin? I think a college job would be great for him. I think he would mix it up. He would be the answer to Cignetti at Indiana. Like a ton of reasons I think Mike should finish up in college. I wish he would have got the Michigan job. He could have got it if he wanted it. And then I think a guy like Larry Foote takes the job at the Steelers next. I mean, you know, obviously he's Todd Bowles' co-coordinator on defense, but I think the Rooney family would love to hire a former player as a head coach. And I've always told Larry this: you're the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can see that happening in the next 5 years. But I would love to see Mike Tomlin in college. My fault, Ryan.
No, you're good. I was just going to say that, again, the interesting thing about Tomlin is, again, he's never had that one just unforgivable season that everyone agrees that it's time, because they've also, whenever you replace a franchise quarterback, and Big Ben was certainly that, it's always hard to go get the next guy. This NFC South has dealt with that for several years. It's why it's such a complicated thing when the national media says, well, the Bucs have won the division under Todd Bowles every year. Yeah, but look at the quarterbacks and look at the teams they're playing. Look at the records they're having. Carolina says goodbye to Cam Newton. They've had a mixture of Sam Darnold before he recovered his career, Baker Mayfield before he recovered his career, then Bryce Young. Then they brought Cam back for a moment. Matt Ryan post-Atlanta.
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton. Yeah, they've had Atlanta's had Marcus Mariota, and they've had Desmond Ridder. They're trying to figure out if Penix is the guy, while Kirk Cousins was simultaneously supposed to be the short-term guy. New Orleans, Drew Brees retires after the Bucs beat him in the playoffs, and then they've been all over the place with Derek Carr and then Spencer Rattler, now Tyler Shuck. Like, these are the quarterbacks that have been in this division the last 4 or 5 years after 3 incredible borderline Hall of Fame, if not absolutely Hall of Fame guys.
Great point.
For all 3 of those organizations are gone, and they're replacing them every other year now because they can't find their guy. And that's what the Bucs have been able to take advantage of with just barely 500 records. So that's why the context matters. Like, yeah, I love winning the division. I hope the Bucs win the division tomorrow, but also they're 500 in a division that can't find a quarterback. Like, the Buccaneers have the best quarterback in the division. They have the best a lot of things in the division, and yet they're still in the position that they're in today.
Not just quarterback, head coaches too. They're cycling through head coaches, those 3 as well. And maybe they have their guys now, but they've cycled through several head coaches during that time frame as well. All right, coming up next, we will give our player of the game. Don't go anywhere. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustration part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the Game Time app to check out upcoming NFL games. There's several of them that are really good. Mentioned one would be the Bucs and the Panthers that just took place. There's also several other ones in there. There's playoff games coming up as well. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. One of my favorite features, being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. I've mentioned that many times. Love that feature. I want to see where I'm going to sit, and being able to have that feature on there makes it so much easier. It makes you want to buy tickets from them. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for one final segment of the Bucs Squad show. Player of the game, I'm going to go with Lavonte David. As Ryan mentioned earlier in the defensive breakdown, could be his final game as a Buc, and I thought he played a great game by leading this defense. He finished the game with 6 tackles, 5 of them were solo. He also had the one of the fumble recoveries, and so I thought he just had a great game. What could be his final game? I thought he played with a ton of effort, and I thought the defense fed off that. I thought this was the most effort that I've seen them play with in a long time defensively.
Yeah, they were motivated at the line of scrimmage for sure. And again, I attribute that in a time of turmoil to the leader in the locker room amongst those players. And again, I think Lavonte David's a great call of that. I'll take the kind of obvious offensive one of Cade Otton. Cade has had some pretty bad moments this year. You think of the ball that he loses in the Rams game that becomes a touchdown. There were some reviews earlier in the season where he dropped the pass as he was going to the ground. He's just had some drops this year, and there's going to be an offseason conversation about him because his contract was up this year, and we're going to see if the Bucs want to re-sign him, want to draft somebody, that whole sort of thing, something we'll get to in the future. But, I thought that in a game where clearly the Bucs did a better job of play action passing, they needed to utilize it because of the weather. Cade Otton gave him a reason to keep doing it. And to be fair to Cade, his touchdown was not off of play action. That was ripping the seam that Mayfield did on the first drive after hitting him a couple of other times on that drive. And then just to get the game clinching, almost game clinching catch. I realized that Carolina got it back with 20 seconds left, but for all intents and purposes, the game clinching catch there on that third down, that's what you need out of tight end. It's not going to look like 90 yards and touchdown each and every week from tight end, but when you have moments of need, whether it be a wet weather game, whether it be an important third down, maybe the quarterback doesn't want to let one rip for whatever reason, if he's not healthy, if he doesn't trust the secondary looks that he's getting, the tight end's the safety valve for a lot of teams and a lot of quarterbacks. And so, I think again, Cade had an uneven year, but he really was triumphant today, and one of the big reasons the Bucs won.
Yeah, my player of the game, would be Baker Mayfield. I really think 16 to 22 is very accurate in a bad weather game. Threw for 203 yards. He had the one ill-advised throw, and when I watched it, I don't know what he was looking at. I thought the Panthers did a good job of disguising, and then they dropped in the coverage, and he threw it right to the linebacker. But other than that, he ran for 31 yards, had a long of 11. And just his ability to improvise. And like I mentioned earlier, he extended some plays. He just made some things happen. He looked like the guy, that won the Heisman Trophy. Like he showed you why he's the best quarterback in this division and one of the best in the league, and was an early MVP candidate, back in September. So Cade Otton is a guy that I thought played extremely well. He was the missing piece. And, when in doubt, throw it to the tight end, check it down and find him. And especially when you're overly loaded at receiver, the way the Bucs are, and in a game where your top receivers only get 2 catches apiece, it seemed like the game plan was to take those guys away and make Cade beat you, and he did. And I think Lavonte played well. 6 tackles isn't a lot, but at the same time, when you can recover a fumble, and I just think his presence was there. But I think all things with this team, all roads go through Baker Mayfield. His turnover situation, obviously they're a different team when they have multiple turnovers or 0 turnovers. Obviously the record indicates that. But I think Baker played with a chip on his shoulder, and I think when you saw the touchdown pass to Cade Otton, when you saw him doing like this, and I'll say the censor version, he said, "This is my stuff. Like, this is my stuff." Like, when you saw him doing that, I think those players feed off of that. And I think Lavonte picked up off of Baker's energy after that touchdown and said, "Come on, guys, get on my back. Let's do it." And I think Winfield, played pretty decent too. So I just feel like everybody played their role today to win the game, but I just think if Baker wasn't 16 to 22 in bad weather and was able to make some plays with his legs, the game could have been different. Obviously the blocked field goal was unacceptable, but at the same time, I think I'm going to say something. I think if the Bucs do happen to get in, if the Saints win tomorrow, which I don't think will happen, but if they do win, I actually think the Bucs are dangerous. I think they would be the most dangerous team in the playoffs, meaning they can blow themselves up, but they can blow you up too. They can go in there and light you up with all these weapons, or they can find a way to lose like they've done. But I think what Josh Rizard and Todd Bowles figured out today was just a little bit too late. And if they happen again, they can probably mix it up and upset somebody. I'm telling you, and get to that divisional round, and things can get very interesting.
Yeah, and I was going to say that too because, after the last game is when we heard that they had the players-only meeting. Yeah, that's when Chris Godwin talked about the leaders got the team together, had that players-only meeting. And so was that a little, too late kind of thing? Because they looked like they played with a lot more energy today compared to what we've seen in the last couple of weeks and a lot more effort. We do have one question from someone that is listening. So he put, where do you guys sit with the head coaching situation? Do you think they move on or do they keep Todd and make him change the staff? Would Grizz survive? So kind of a two-part there. I personally think that Todd Bowles is gone. Now, all these reports are saying that he's safe, and they probably have more inside intel than I do, but I personally think he's gone. I think they will move on from him. And because of that, I don't think Grizz would survive because I think they would hire an offensive-minded coach. That guy would kind of want his own staff. Now, to his other point, if Todd was going to stay, I think Grizz does survive in that scenario because I think they would, at least in Todd's mind, be like understanding all the injuries that happened offensively. And by the time they got the players back, it was kind of already spiraling kind of thing. So kind of two-parted there, but I don't think Todd will survive.
So I think he actually will survive. I have been not loving the reports, and I don't know. It seems like a pretty concerted effort to get out by the national media that the Bucs are at least very seriously consider keeping him for reasons such as we mentioned earlier, winning the division titles, but then also the buyout, which some of us come from the world of college football where schools are paying 2 or 3 coaches not to coach. So an NFL owner who also owns Manchester United, who I know, by the way, their fans don't exactly love the Glazer family, not paying a buyout seems pretty trivial in the world of NFL finance. But I will say that I think he should be removed. I will not be shy about that. I do think it's time to move on. Now, I think that if they do keep him, then I do think they will fire Josh Grizzard. I think the first person that has to be fired is Thomas McGahee, the special teams coordinator. That did not go well in any way this year. It really did not. I think even before you make a decision on Grizzard, you have to do that. That's not negotiable. I do think you move on from Grizzard too, but they didn't punt it well. They got punts blocked. They had field goals blocked. I don't recall Chase McLaughlin ever having this many issues getting a kick up before. They couldn't kick cover. They just kicked it out the back the final 3 or 4 weeks of the year. Their returns were not overly explosive. I mean, they just didn't have any redeeming quality there. So I think McGahee would be gone. I do think Grizzard would be gone if Bowles is returning. Again, my personal gut feeling is that they're setting the stage for they're doing like a soft landing right now, but hey, he actually might stay. But me personally, I would move on.
I think Bowles is safe for one more year. And then we were in the group chat with our text, and I said that but I think he has 1 year left. I mean, for a guy, as hard as it is to win in this league and the musical chairs that you see in coaching, I mean, let's not sneeze on the fact that he won a bad division 3 years in a row. Okay. I mean, like that, that speaks for itself. If you want to fire a guy that has a 8 and 9 year, I mean, the debacle for me to go 1-7 in that stretch before today, I think that's a fireable offense. But I think his track record speaks louder than what happened this season. And I don't think you fire a guy for having a down second half of the year after what he's done. Now, it's not that, I mean, his record isn't great, you know what I mean, with Tampa Bay. But at the same time, I think they're going to make him, as you mentioned, make some changes on his staff. I think he's going to fire some guys on defense, even though he calls it. I think he's going to bring in some more experienced guys that can help him game plan and probably be a voice of reason. He has some younger guys that obviously, like Larry and those guys, and he's brought them from Arizona when he came from Arizona to Tampa Bay. So they're going to make him make some changes on his staff and give him 1 more year. And then I think Grizz, I don't know if he's safe. I don't know yet. I'm kind of 50-50 on that. But I don't think Bowles is going anywhere. But I think he only has one more year, though. But I don't think you let a guy go that won your division as many times as he did and had his success and had a bad half of a season, and then you just scrap it and tank it and just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
And I know we're out of time, but quick question here, though. If they decide to stay with Bowles, do they say, you can stay, but someone else has to call the defense?
Probably.
I can see that.
I definitely can see that. But even if they tell him that, he'll still call it, and he'll make it seem like somebody else is calling it. But as long as Todd Bowles is with your staff, he's calling that defense.
Right.
I would be floored if Todd Bowles was the head coach yet still not calling his own defense. I can't fathom him not calling his own defense.
Right, for sure. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, this is the Squad Show. We do this a couple times a week. It's just extra content. Doesn't take anything away from what James will do and does. He does a great job. He will have his post-game reaction, I believe, tomorrow. Also, with this being possibly the offseason, depending on what happens with the Falcons and the Saints tomorrow, did want to let you know. So right now we do an episode on Tuesday, then we do a post-game episode. However, this show will continue once the season's over. We just will then have to do 2 midweek shows. So we'll do like a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. Still working out the details of when we will do that, but that will be the shift. It won't be on Saturday or Sunday anymore unless we just have to because of scheduling or something like that. So wanted to let y'all know that. But yeah, until next time, fire the cannons.